Okay, so I went out the other day to shoot some time-lapse photos. One of my favorite locations here in the lower mainland of Vancouver is a little park called Barnett Marine Park in Burnaby. It is on Burrard Inlet, which separates the North Shore from the mainland. And there are really cool cloud formations that move through this time of year, which is late winter. And I knew that being so cold on this particular day, that there was probably a chance of some good snow clouds coming over. So I set up both my DSLR and my GoPro to shoot two different looks for this time lapse. Shot for about 45 minutes, somewhere around there. Can't really remember. Came away with about 550 shots with the GoPro. So let's kind of get into it here. Once you've imported all your photos into Lightroom, this is in the develop page, just kind of scrub through them, make sure you got them all in there. I think I shot around 550 pictures. I think I ended up with this one. You can choose on one in particular that you want to edit, and what the heck is going on here? That is GoPro. That is shot at super wide angle, which what it does, can't really do anything about that, but what you can do in Lightroom is you can adjust for the lens. So if you scroll all the way down, you can go to lens correction and check off, I always check off chromatic, remove chromatic aberration, just because no matter if it has it or not, I always do it. It should automatically sort of detect which kind of camera you have. This particular one is the GoPro Hero 7 Black, but as you can see, all the different camera brands are on the list. Click on that, and what it'll do is it'll just straighten out your horizon or adjust for that particular wide angle lens. But it's still crooked, so you got to kind of rotate it. Rotate a little bit. Now it looks pretty good. Kind of happy with that. Nice straight horizon. Yeah, that looks pretty good. From there, you want to go up to your adjustments. I always start with dehazing. I love this tool. It is amazing. It makes everything kind of pop. Brings out it just does a really good job on most every picture. I always start with that just to kind of get a base, and then I'll up the clarity a bit just to kind of bring out some details, mess around with the vibrance, not too much. You kind of want to just usually kind of hover in that sort of 10 to 15 range just to kind of make the colors pop a little bit. If you notice here, the water's a little dark, there's very little detail in the trees or off in the distance. You want to kind of bring up that and use the shadows adjustment for that. And that'll kind of just brighten up any sort of dark shadowy areas. This is the benefit of shooting in RAW. You have all that information in the photo. So all those trees are still there, all those ripples are still there, everything is still there. So you bring up the shadows, bring down the highlights just to kind of make the clouds pop out a little bit. Brings a little more detail out of the clouds. That looks pretty good. From there, maybe bump up the exposure a wee bit. Not too much, because then it's just going to make everything wash out. Just a touch. I try not to kind of go over like something that like this with a GoPro because of its automatic exposure. Yeah. Anytime I up the exposure, I always go back to the dehaze just to kind of bring it down a little bit, just to kind of get that exposure down. That looks pretty good. So yeah, some good water detail, good tree detail, all that kind of stuff. Clouds look good. So you've got one picture edited. Now what you want to do is you want to apply that edit to all the pictures. So you click Control A and select all your photos, and then you go over to the sync button down here and click on sync. And it'll bring up this box here, which basically wants you to go over all of the things that you want to make adjustments to. Everything I believe is checked by default except for spot removal, but we didn't do any spot removal, which is up here. We didn't do any of that, so you just want to hit synchronize, and it'll kind of do its little setup there, and it'll go through all your pictures, applying those changes to all the pictures that you select. In our case, we had Control A, which is going to basically be all 550 some odd pictures. And if you scroll through, you'll see that it's just doing its thing. Now, some of the end pictures in this time lapse, the clouds got really heavy, really dark, which is fine. just adds more drama to the picture, but I just want to make sure that it did that same changes to the water, so that the water is basically the one thing that doesn't really change too much in this picture. So you do a little spot check, you can kind of click on that, that looks pretty good. As you can see, these really heavy snow clouds came through just towards the end of this particular one that I shot. Alright, and that's about it for Lightroom. All you really want to do here is go to export, and you want to export your photos. Find a folder, make a folder. You can basically do that through here. Give your files a name in terms of sequence, and click finish. It'll do its export. Now, depending on how many photos you have, will determine how long this will take. 550 pictures is going to take a while because there's a lot of changes to these pictures. Lightroom has to do a lot of work. So once this is done, we'll open up the next program, which I use, and I'll go over that with you. And the next program basically is for deflickering the images, and kind of an important thing with time-lapse. This is Time-Lapse De-Flicker. I use this one for all my time lapses. It's a very simple program. As you can see, there's literally nothing on the main page. None of these are clickable for some reason. I've never been able to figure out why they're there. But anyway, so you just basically want to open up a Finder window or a File Explorer window of where your sequence is, or your pictures that you just saved from Lightroom are. And you want to hit highlight one of them, and then highlight all of them to select all. And basically you're just going to do that, click on one, select all, and then just drag them over into the window. And it'll kind of do its thing where it's importing them, get all the information from the program. Super simple program, but super awesome. It basically, when you shoot a time lapse, no matter what settings you have, you're always going to get a little bit of change in the exposure, shutter speed, aperture, all that kind of stuff. Even if you shoot manual and you have the same settings for every picture, you're going to get a bit of flicker. It's going to play back a little bit differently from frame to frame. So what this does is it basically takes that flicker out of the sequence itself. So as you can see, it just kind of goes through its thing and analyzes each picture. Gives you an idea as far as what your time lapse is going to look like too. This is obviously super slow. It's going to look a lot faster than this as an end product. But the main thing is, as you can see down in that bottom left window, that little deflicker thing is checked. That's kind of the main thing, but I'll go over that. And if you're wondering what that picture in the background of my desktop is, I do a lot of sports photography. And this particular image that I shot was shot up in Whistler. That is at the Crankworks Festival. That's, I believe, Ryan Nyquist doing his thing off one of the jumps. Yeah, love sports photography, but I'm not shooting time lapses. You can see more of that stuff on my website. Yeah, okay, so we've done that. Make sure the deflicker thing is checked. And then what you want to do, don't mess with the noise reduction unless you haven't done any of those changes in Lightroom or Photoshop. Click on render, and it'll bring up this little box here, which is basically asking you what you want to name the file. This applies to both if you're outputting the deflickered images or the video, or both. In my case, I'm just outputting the video as basically a finished product, because I don't really do any edits beyond this point if I don't want to. Find a file that you want to save it to. In my case, it's basically going to be a video file in the same file, or a subfolder, I should say, from where I saved the images. So just make a video folder, or whatever you want to call it. Select the folder, because that's where it's going to save this video file. So that's that. It creates a scratch disk, all that kind of stuff. I always save it as 4K, provided that your camera shoots high enough quality images to produce a 4K video. 24 frames per second I always do, because it's a smoother playback. Don't generally mess with the megabits per second. Kind of leave it at 50. Auto crop to 16:9. Yes, you can uncheck that if you want to do a further edit in some sort of video editing program, like a pan or a zoom or something like that, and you basically want the full 4:3 ratio. But I'm just going to auto crop this one to 16:9, because it's basically going to be a finished product once it renders. click render, and it will do its thing. And again, depending on how many images you have, it'll determine how long it takes. This one, 550 images, should probably take about 4 minutes. And I'm running an i7 processor, 32 gigs of RAM with a 4 gig card in it. So I've got a pretty decent system. But yeah, it's, again, depending on how many pictures you have and how much information is in those images will determine how long it's going to take. So we'll come back to this one. I'm just going to basically fast forward this video towards the end, and then we'll play the video, and you can see what it looks like as a finished product. It's a great program. I love this program, Lapse De-Flicker. I know there's some plugins you can get for Lightroom that'll do this. I've been using this program for a while. It is a paid program. I did get it from the Windows shop. I can't remember how much it was, 20 bucks, something like that. But it's a great program. Super simple. Does exactly what you want it to do. You go ahead and close this window, and basically then just find where the where you saved the video file, and we'll take a look at that now. Oh yeah, those clouds are awesome. That's snow being dumped off that main one there. Super awesome. And then these big heavy storm clouds come through, and you can just see it just sort of draping that snow over the North Shore. That looks so cool. Yeah, 550 shots, 20-second video. These are the programs that I use. I do all my video editing with Davinci Resolve. I love it. You can check the rest of my stuff out on my website. You can check it out on all my social medias at jwphotoworks.com. My website is jwphotoworks.ca. Again, I do a lot of sports photography. I do a lot of time-lapse stuff. I do a lot of stock photography as well when I'm not shooting the others. Yeah, anyway, hope that helps. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to be doing a lot more of these. I think for this channel I'm going to do mostly time-lapse breakdowns, I think, because it seems to be the simplest. I'll probably do some sports stuff as well. Hopefully one day we'll get back to shooting sports on a bigger scale. But yeah, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you again.